Hello everyone. Today I will tell you about things that really should not be done on a car equipped with a manual transmission so as not to damage either the box or other units of the car. Enjoy and useful viewing. Point number 1. Abrupt or too fast gear shifting. The consequence of such operation of the car may be licking of the toothed part of the clutch or wear of the synchronizer. Now, about the reasons. The fact is that when the mommy's racer gets behind the wheel of an ordinary civilian car and tries to push in a checkerboard around the city, he, forgetting about sports or manually, really wants to change gears quickly, while naturally quickly pressing the clutch pedal. But situations often arise when, with such a fast, and maybe even simultaneous gear shifting and squeezing of the clutch pedal is not fully depressed. Because of this, there is an incomplete disconnection of the gearbox from the engine. The thing is that when the clutch pedal is not fully depressed, the primary shaft of the transmission continues to rotate under load, which causes increased wear of the locking rings, as well as the synchronizer teeth. In fact, synchronizers, although they are a fairly durable mechanism, and in general there are practically no fragile parts in a manual transmission, to kill it once, you need to try very hard for this, and it is almost impossible. But nevertheless, such a habit to race or abruptly change gears while not fully depressing the clutch pedal will ultimately lead to the fact that the gears will first begin to engage unclearly, perhaps even with a crunch, and then may begin to fly out altogether. Therefore, such things should not be abused. Point number 2. Engaging reverse gear without bringing the car to a complete stop. The thing is that most cars with a manual transmission do not have a synchronizer for reverse gear. When reverse gear is engaged, the gears simply align, their grooves enter each other, and then scroll. Many who drive a manual transmission have probably noticed that when you need to quickly engage reverse gear, even if you come to a complete stop and abruptly engage reverse, there are two cases. First, sometimes the reverse gear does not engage, and you have to release the clutch, let the car roll a little, release the clutch again, then the reverse gear engages normally. Second case, the car has not yet completely stopped. That is, it rolls forward a little. You have already released the clutch and engaged reverse. At this point, a certain crunching sound may occur. This crunching occurs because one of the gears is spinning and the other is trying to get into it. At this point, the end part of the gear teeth is licked or worn away. Let me repeat. By abruptly engaging the reverse gear, you will in no case break it. For this, you would have to try very hard to, for example, break off a tooth of the gear. Such cases practically do not happen. However, if you abuse this day after day, the teeth can wear out, and a story will begin when the reverse gear will first engage poorly, then, perhaps, will fly out, and over time it will start to fly out constantly, and you will have to hold it with your hand. Therefore, such things should not be abused either. Point number 3. Downshift more than one gear. Let's say you're driving in 4th gear at, say, 80 kilometers per hour. Your tachometer shows, for example, 4,000 revolutions per minute, and for some reason you want to shift from 4th to 2nd gear. At this point, when you press the clutch pedal, the crankshaft speed naturally drops, and the wheel speed does not decrease so rapidly. At this point, there are two ways. The first is to slowly press the clutch pedal. In this case, the entire load will fall on the clutch disc on its damper springs, and it will overheat quite a lot. In principle, nothing terrible will happen. Option number 2. You have switched to 2nd gear and suddenly release the clutch pedal. Here, the gears and bearings in the transmission will receive a fairly serious load, and the engine will also receive a load. If, as I said above, you have 4,000 revolutions per minute in 4th gear, and you reduce to 2nd, the tachometer needle will very quickly rise to the red zone, which will cause the engine to receive a serious load. Some people claim that the timing belt or chain can slip a few teeth. However, in my experience, this has never happened. My father told me that on old cars in our country, such a situation could theoretically happen, but it never happened to him. In principle, he also did not move the gear shift lever from 4th to 2nd when the tachometer showed a lot of revolutions. I would probably assume that on modern cars, such a situation with a timing belt slipping can only occur if the belt, for example, is in engine oil, say, because the camshaft oil seal leaks oil and the belt becomes slippery. Again, I have never had this happen in my practice. Write in the comments if you have ever had a chain or belt slip due to excessive engine braking with a downshift from 5th to 2nd or from 5th to 3rd gear. It would be very interesting to hear such a story. It is also worth adding to this point that if you are moving in fourth gear, you have 1,000 revolutions per minute on the tachometer and a speed of 30 kilometers per hour. Then when switching to second gear, even if you just drop the clutch, nothing terrible will happen. I will also add that such manipulation with a decrease of 2 gears at once, especially at high initial revs, is quite an accident hazard. In this case, the drive axle begins to brake sharply, and the car can either turn around or even roll over, and accordingly, a traffic accident will occur. Do you need it? Point number 4. Press the gas at low revs and in high gear. Let's say you're driving at 50 kilometers per hour, you're in 5th gear, and the tachometer shows, say, 1,300 revolutions per minute. In principle, if you're driving on a level surface, or going downhill in 5th gear at 50 kilometers per hour, and you're not pressing the gas pedal but just carefully maintaining speed, there's nothing wrong with that. My father has been driving like that for 30 years, and not a single car has ever complained, although he repairs them himself, and there are no problems. It's a different matter when you're driving at 50 kilometers per hour in 5th gear, there's a car in front of you, and you want to, for example, overtake it, or there's a hill ahead, and you press the gas pedal to the floor without downshifting. Here, we already encounter some problems. First, when the engine is running at low revs, and you press the gas pedal to the floor, you can feel vibrations caused by detonation. These vibrations are quite detrimental to both the elements inside the engine, bearings, shafts, pistons, and the elements outside the engine, such as its supports. The second problem, an incorrectly selected gear ratio also has a detrimental effect on the transmission elements. When the engine tries to turn everything inside the transmission, do not forget that each gear or bearing is designed for certain loads. A load that is normal for 2nd gear can be detrimental to the gear responsible for 5th or 4th gear. The next problem is increased wear of engine components due to insufficient lubrication. This is due to the fact that the oil pump pressure directly depends on the crankshaft speed. The higher the speed, the higher the oil pressure. Therefore, an engine operating under load at low speeds experiences oil starvation. Also, for those who like to save money, I will remind you that both driving in neutral and driving in high gear with low speeds do not save fuel. I have already told you more about the forced idle mode and why the car engine does not consume fuel in this mode. For those curious, there is a link in the upper right corner. Follow it, watch, enjoy. Point number 5. Monitor the level and quality of oil in your transmission. Yes, most manual transmission cars don't have a dipstick or oil pressure sensor, and some don't even have a drain plug. The oil is there for life. However, if you lift the car to change tires or engine oil, watch out for oil leaks on the transmission, from seals, or perhaps because you caught a rock or drove over an ice block, which could cause a crack in the transmission housing, causing oil to leak. First, open your car's operating manual or service manual, and see after what period of time it is necessary, and whether it is necessary at all, to change the transmission oil in your car's gearbox. Second, if you notice oil leaks on the transmission housing, whether from seals or from a crack, first, be sure to seal it, and second, top up the oil to the level. Let me remind you that 95% of the time, there is some movement inside the transmission. Even when you are in neutral and the car is stationary, the transmission input shaft rotates, and it also rotates the intermediate shaft. If you are moving, that is, the car is in dynamics, the transmission output shaft rotates. The input shaft stops rotating only when you squeeze the clutch. So do not think that everything is so simple and lubricating or cooling liquid is not needed. Be sure to pay utmost attention to this. Comrades, thank you all for watching. If this video was useful for you, put likes, subscribe to the channel, repost to your friend, and so on. Thank you all and good luck.